The college football season is winding towards a conclusion, but it's never been more interesting. I'm John Canzano. You can read me at johncanzano.com. He's Jon Wilner. Find him at wilnerhotline.com. Wilner, you ready, man? Are you hydrated? Do you have electrolytes in you? We've got the end of the season. We can't be like those guys in the marathon that get to the finish line and they're kind of staggering, or maybe you ever run a marathon? They have to help you up and help you across the finish line. We don't want to be that guy.
I've actually run 5. I have never needed help, but I know the staggering feeling. Those last 0.2 are harder than the previous 6 in a lot of ways. So, I hear you. I'm loaded up on caffeine.
Yeah.
And ready to go. We got a lot to talk about. We plan to do this, answer questions from our readers and listeners, but also we got to get to the news. We got to get the CFP.
Yep.
So we should jump
there.
In. Yeah,
let's jump right in. Oregon, Indiana, semifinal loss for the Ducks, devastating. A lot of heat on Dan Lanning. You wrote a great piece about sort of what is going on and what's missing at Oregon. What do you mean by what's missing?
Well, I just think specifically, right, the fact that both coordinators are leaving, I think provides Lanning with a little bit of a natural reset. Something is missing, and this is why I think that back-to-back years, they have been blown out in the first half. The combined score of the Ohio State Rose Bowl and the Indiana Peach Bowl was 69-15 in the first halves. And these are teams that Oregon played 2 months earlier and was competitive against, right? And then all of a sudden you're in the playoff, the stage is bigger, scouting is probably better, and they are just run off the field both times. And to me, that is not a cause for alarm, but it's a cause for, Lanning to say, you know what, do we need to do things, maybe tweak something here or there? And he's got 2 new coordinators. Now, both are internal promotions, and I think, it's fair to view those a little bit skeptically. I'm always skeptical about internal promotions with coaches who haven't been, really in their new roles. But I don't know. I mean, you were there. I just think it's not just a one-off with the Rose Bowl. It's now back-to-back years, right? They did advance. A lot of fans are saying, well, they're making progress. They advanced one more round in the CFP. I would say that was a function of the draw because I got to play Texas Tech with no offense in the quarterfinals, right? They are actually no closer to beating the best team than they were last year.
I think we have to first step back and go, okay, what's fair? What's fair to Oregon?
Yeah.
Because I see what you see. I do see that there is something there that needs to be to drill down on. But I also am looking at the fact that, they will have lost to that juggernaut team for the second year in a row that probably is going to win it all. And is there a shame in being the second best team? Is there a shame in being the Buffalo Bills under Marv Levy? I was in New York, by the way, for that New York Super Bowl with the Seahawks and Broncos. And I was in a restaurant and Marv Levy walks through the door and he's standing next to me waiting for a table. And I thought, gosh, Marv, if you'd only won one of those Super Bowls, they would have ushered you right in and given you a table. Otherwise, he's got a party of 4 for Marv. Dan Lanning is in that neighborhood. I do think it's worth noting that he's had several second-time meetings with teams. Washington back in the Pac-12, you can remember they played in the regular season, played in the playoff, or played in the championship game. And then he had another crack at Ohio State, had another crack at Indiana. These other coaches are making better adjustments. Oregon has not been a great second half team under Dan Lanning. I've watched other teams make adjustments. I do think there's an opportunity with these coordinators going out for Oregon maybe to invest a little bit in the analyst roles, invest in some guys with gray hair who have seen some battles. I think you need some coaches to coach these guys that are 4- and 5-star talents. I also, though, think Oregon got here a year early, Wilner. Like, they're 19 and 20 and 21 at key positions. I think you look over at Indiana, it's 22, 23, 24. Yeah. I think Oregon's a year early to the stage. I think that played a role. You got Dante Moore at 20 throwing a pick 6 against, D'Angelo Pons, who's a transfer from JMU, who was a 3-star guy, but he's been with Signetti for multiple years, like this, 3-4 years. So I think you've got old players against young players. I think you've got experienced coaches against maybe relatively inexperienced coaches.
Yes.
Oregon staff really heavy on recruiting, not so heavy on development. And I think a little bit of that's, I think, the missing thing that you're talking about.
Well, and because when you get to the quarters or semis and you're playing, the other title contenders, it's not just personnel, it's also coaching. You've got to have both at elite levels to win these games. And they aren't close, right? That's the thing. Yeah. They were no closer to beating the best team this year than they were last year. I mostly agree with the premise that they're a year early. I would argue, these days, is anybody a year early with the portal, right? You could think you're a year early, and then the next year you're also young because you lose guys and new players come in. It's tough. It's complicated, and he's done a great job, and he's the perfect coach for Oregon in this era. There's no doubt.
Yeah.
But they gotta tweak something.
Yeah,
that's kind of what I think.
It's a little obnoxious to me that some of the Oregon fans were going after Lanning after the game. Oh my gosh, here we are. We can't win this thing. We're never going to get there. And I'm looking at it going, don't you realize like how lucky you are to have lost, one regular season game in the last 2 years? You've been to the playoff. Your team, everybody penciled into the semifinals. It's like, let's not forget that. This is part of the journey, part of the progression.
Yep.
He's still a relatively inexperienced coach. He's looking across the field at Curt Signetti, who's 64 years old.
Yeah.
Dan Lanning's got some growth that he has to have. But I agree. I think there's a coaching tweak, and I think these guys need to have birthdays. I think they need to get older. Yeah. And if you're Dante Moore, you stay in school, Wilner. You stay in school. You come back. That was such glaring evidence that you're not ready for the next stage. To watch the way he performed in that game. Speaking of the next stage, how about this one? We haven't talked about this. The saga of Damon Williams Jr., the hokey pokey, 1 foot in, 1 foot out. Where's he? What did you make of all that at Washington?
Oof. Well, I mean, just on the front line in Seattle, what a 72 hours that was. I mean, he did it. In addition to it being bad business, it was terrible timing with the memorial service. I mean, he could not have done it worse from a PR standpoint, right? He got terrible advice. Obviously, the family was using side advisors to see what the best offer out there was. I have every reason to believe LSU was one of the schools trying to get him. But on a bigger scale, right, this was an important saga for the sport. If Williams had successfully just signed that contract and then ignored it and moved on to another school with no consequences, that would have, basically been DEFCON 0 for the revenue sharing era, because then none of these contracts would mean anything, and you would have month-to-month free agency. The fact that Washington held the line and was going to force him to either go to court or pay the $4 million was a huge victory for the system in terms of securing the validity of these contracts and creating some sense of stability. So I actually think there was a much bigger, there was a 40,000 foot angle to this, in addition to, the panic and frustration and anger that it caused in Seattle.
I think there's a PR element here that Damon and his family, his agent, his new agency need to completely be tuned into, because, if you're his head coach, Jed Fish, you're looking over going, I don't know if I can trust this guy, even though he's going to say, everything's great. If you're fans at Washington and teammates of his at Washington, there's been an erosion of the bond there. Yeah, I think it's really important. He doesn't have a game to play right now. He can't go out and throw 4 touchdown passes and have everybody love him again. That opportunity will come. But I think Damon has to be really careful between now and spring ball about the messaging that he does publicly. And I'm not usually a big advocate of the fake it till you make it, but I think he's got to do some of that faking it till he makes it, because he needs to win back that locker room. He needs to win back some trust. And I think the messaging has to be, look, I'm still young. I'm in college where we're supposed to learn. I've learned something from this. I listened to some of the wrong people. I got some advice that I realize now I probably should have been careful about taking, you know. And
Yep.
I think if he comes out with that, there's a lot of us that can go, oh yeah, I can remember being 20 and making some bad decisions, or maybe surrounding yourself with the wrong people. But if he just comes out and says, you know, it was a business decision, I had to explore my options, I don't think that's going to play. And I think that hurts him in the locker room.
Would you have taken him back if you're Jed Fish?
I don't know, given the contract. I mean, is there a chance there that Washington didn't have a choice? Like, were they also bound by that contract? They were gonna have to pay him. You know, even, you know, if he said, hey, I'm not in the portal, I'm going to honor the contract. I don't know enough about that, but I think there has to be a serious heart-to-heart sit down. And if I'm Jed Fish, I want Demond out publicly selling the notion, hey, this was wrong. My bad judgment.
Yep.
Man, I really didn't know what I was doing. I listened to some of the wrong people. We can all relate to that, but this was ugly. And it was you watched fans lose their mind. There were media members losing their minds, and then having to backtrack after he's coming back. And it's just such an indictment of fandom in 2026 as well. But I hated it. I didn't like it. I don't like the fact that this is unrestricted free agency all the time.
Yeah.
Even though you're right, it was a win for kind of the guardrails of what we have currently in the system, but they're not much in the way of guardrails, are they?
No, but this would have been catastrophic. I mean, there's no doubt there's tons of problems, and we're going to get to a few of them with our.
But keep in mind, I mean, Miami's going to play a player in this game against Indiana in the title game that did the same damn thing. You know, left and went to Miami to play for Mario Cristobal.
Yeah.
But Demond is a bigger profile guy because you're right. There would be he'd be like the Pied Piper. And, you know, if contracts don't mean anything, then look out. But welcome to college where you learn something, Demond. Like, a contract is a binding agreement. So there's
Absolutely. We should get to the game, right?
Yeah,
there is a game, the last game. Boy, I hope it's as good as the FCS championship. I don't know if you watched that, Illinois State, Montana State. That was incredible. Let's hope that Indiana, Miami is close to that in terms of excitement. I kind of worry that it's going to be another blowout, but what do you think? What are you looking at here?
Well, look, I was in Atlanta for this Oregon-Indiana game, and walking around Atlanta, it became evident it was going to be a heavily pro-Hoosier crowd. Red everywhere, red in the elevator, red on the sidewalks, red, everybody, very few Duck fans. And that home field advantage made a difference at the stadium. When D'Angelo Pons picks off Dante Moore and goes for a touchdown the other way, it happened on kind of my end of the stadium. I've never heard anything louder in a football stadium. The eruption of that Indiana crowd was loud. I think Miami's going to have that advantage, Wilner, in Miami. I think, the Miami fans are buying up all the tickets. They don't have the travel expense that Indiana fans have. I think there'll be some Hoosier fans there, but I talked to a lot of the Indiana fans after the game, and I said, are you going? And they said, oh gosh, did you see the ticket price is too rich for me? So I think you're going to get a real pro Miami crowd. And I think Mario Cristobal knows what he needs to do here. He will see and study and pore over that Ohio State, Indiana Big Ten championship game film, because that's the kind of game Mario Cristobal wants to play. He wants to play 13-10. He wants to play 14-10, 17-14. That's the kind of game that Miami can stay in. I think physicality-wise, the Miami front seven can hang with Indiana. I think Mario will try to ugly it up and bloody it up and shorten the game. I think it'll be closer than most expect for those two reasons, but I have no qualm picking Indiana to win this game. I think Indiana wins, but I don't think it's going to be the blowout like we saw against the Ducks.
Well, I think the line is 8.5, Indiana by 8.5. So I kind of agree with you. I think it will be close. Miami they've got the personnel on the line of scrimmage to match Indiana's physicality. They got a bunch of NFL players on the offensive and defensive lines. They are closer in that regard to Ohio State than maybe Alabama or Oregon are. Mm-hmm. And, Ohio State missed a makeable field goal, and that Big Ten championship game would have gone into overtime. So I'm with you. I think it's going to be close. I am actually very curious to see how the TV ratings go. This is not necessarily a blue blood matchup, right? It is certainly not Ohio State Notre Dame. And we saw with the semifinals, the ratings were not very good, right? The Indiana-Oregon Peach Bowl, those ratings were down 13% from last year. And the goodness gracious, Miami Ole Miss was bad. Those ratings were bad. I recognize it's a Thursday night, but that's part of the CFP problem is playing on Thursday nights. So overall, I was looking this up. The semifinals are the least watched they've ever had in the history of the playoff. And especially if it's not close, but Indiana, Miami, I just don't know how many mainstream fans will tune in. That I'm very curious to see. And it matters because of what we're going to get to in a few minutes. CFP expansion, if they go to 16 or 24, they're going to want a new contract from ESPN or more money, and ESPN could turn around and point to some of the ratings and say, well, I don't know, the eyeballs aren't justifying a whole lot more money. So there's a bigger picture element to the viewership totals that we'll see on Monday.
Totally get it. That is a real world concern, but I feel a little bit like the tail's wagging the dog when we do that. And I know why we're doing it, because you're right. There's so much money out there that's involved in television's driving everything. But I'm delighted that this CFP bracket has felt a lot more like the NCAA tournament, right?
Oh, it's great. I agree with you. It's great.
10 State in the title game. Like, you could have had a 5-10 matchup. Like this feels better to me than watching the same old. And for that reason, like I just hope people, they get a good game. And I think Signetti's probably got the better coaching staff. I think he's got the more trustworthy quarterback in Mendoza versus Beck. But Mario knows how to play this kind of game. And I think Miami plus 8.5 is the play. And I think Indiana wins on the money line. I think I think it's their game to lose. Let's pivot a little bit towards the listener viewer question.
Here we go. Yes.
Questions. What do you got?
We got a lot of questions, and we'll try to get to most of them.
Okay.
Some specific to the West Coast, some national, CFP, all this kind of stuff. Let's start with this. Of the former Pac-12 schools, which new coaching staff is primed for success and which has already got some red flags? So we're talking about, Utah, UCLA, Cal, Stanford. You can add in Washington State, Oregon State. All those are 6 of the 12 legacy schools have new coaches. What do you think? Anything stand out?
Yeah, a couple things jump out at me. I mean, Kirby Moore at Washington State, there's just an uptick of enthusiasm there. I talked to Elizabeth Cantwell, the president at WSU.
Yes.
Early this week. And I think there's something there for Washington State in the new world Pac-12 that maybe wasn't there before the hire of Kirby Moore. The other one that I'm interested in is Tosh Lapoy at Cal. Can an elite recruiter go to a school that traditionally has had problems recruiting and have immediate success? I don't know, but I'm interested. How about you?
Yeah, because a lot of it now is about money. If you got the money, I don't know that it matters as much about your skills as a recruiter, right? I'm with you. Cal and Stanford are interesting because both hired alums, right, who have never been head coaches. To me, I always look at if you've got an inexperienced head coach and that person hires inexperienced coordinators.
Right.
I think that's a big sign of trouble. So, I certainly wonder about situations at Cal and Stanford, Oregon State, a little bit of Utah. Kind of wait and see that, but you got to have both, right? And if you've got a rookie play caller on offense, for instance, like Cal's going to have, and he's paired with an inexperienced head coach, that's certainly a yellow alert for me. I think UCLA, if you're just basing it on experience and proof of performance, right? UCLA's got to feel pretty good about Bob Chesney coming over from James Madison. I think the Bruins are banking on him doing what Kirk Signetti has done at Indiana, which is, I think that's, there's no way that he's going to even come close to duplicating that. But can he get UCLA up to a point of, where they're competitive in the Big Ten? Probably so. So, all right, and here we go. Let's move on to the CFP. All right. There's discussion on the big. Let me start over. Let's move on to the CFP. There's discussion of the Big Ten wanting to expand to 24 teams. How would this work, and what opportunity would there be for the group of 5?
I don't think there's going to be an expanded opportunity for the group of 5 in any of these expanded scenarios. I think the group of 5 is going to probably be relegated to one spot. And then if you can get a team in the top, to make an at-large berth, great. But I know they'll fight for it, but I don't think the Big Ten and the SEC are expanding this bracket, Wilner, to try to let more of the have-nots into the bracket.
Yeah. The sentiment is the other way, unfortunately. So we're going to know. It's a timely question because championship game is Monday. Next Friday is the deadline for the CFP to make a decision on expansion for next year. The two options are three options: staying at 12, going to 16, going to 24. I don't think they can go to 24 in time for next season because that requires such an overhaul of the structure, adding an entire round, getting rid of the conference championship games. 16 is too big a leap to just get there next fall. So really, realistically, the options for next fall are staying at 12 or going to 16. And I would bet that they end up going to 16.
Look, status quo is probably tempting for a lot of people because I still think we're learning things about the 12-team tournament. We learned something last year in the first version of it, and now we're watching buys and teams with first-round buys.
Yep.
Not doing very well, 1-7, right? In 8 games. I think I would like to see a move to 16. I think it merits it, but I also think the first round buys thing might be as important as anything. And again, we're balancing this old world structure with the traditional bowl season with this new world bracket. And that's where the real problems tend to come up.
No doubt about that. I do think if they eventually go to 24, the reason for doing that is basically to get the ACC and Big 12 to agree on the AQ numbers, right? I think if they go to 24, you might get all 4 power conferences with 4 automatic bids, which would enable them to have the play-in games on conference championship weekend. It's possible they would carve out 2 spots for the group of 6. I don't know. I think that's to be determined. But certainly if it's 16, which is what I think is going to happen for next year, the group of 6 position wouldn't change. So it would just be 1, and they would add the 4 spots probably would be all at large. And if you had that this year, you're talking about Texas, Notre Dame, BYU, and Vanderbilt, I believe, would have been the 4 teams that would have gotten in. And then you go, in theory, you just make it easy. And you have 1 plays 16, 2 plays 15. Knowing them, they'll complicate it and they'll create some kind of play-in or double buy situation. Oh my goodness. They just can't do the thing that's simple and easy and best for the sport.
Yeah, we could sketch this up at recess in 5th grade. I mean, and do great with it. What else you got?
All right, Pac-12 expansion question. I'm going to combine two questions. With Jason X staying at New Mexico, and you and I both think he's a tremendous coach, I'm curious if the Lobos might be on the Pac-12's radar as a travel partner for Texas State. And is there any chance the new Pac-12 adds an Eastern division? So you're talking about what? Toledo or UConn, Western Kentucky, those kind of schools, MAC, Conference USA types. What do you think may happen here? Not for next season, certainly, but later in the decade.
I think no shot of an Eastern division. I
Okay.
think they want to be known as the best of the West or the best of the rest. That's how they position themselves. Too many mouths to feed, too much geography. You're getting away from the things that they said, their core values were staying regional and having the best schools on a certain part of the country be part of it. Would they make an exception for a really good school? Would they have made an exception for Tulane? Would they have made an exception for Memphis? Yes, 100% they would have if they could have got them at the right number. But I think they mostly want to stay out in the West. New Mexico's interesting. I think with Eck there, they're gonna be they'll punch above their weight.
Yeah,
but he's not a forever guy there. I kind of see him as the Wisconsin candidate when that Wisconsin job opens up. It'll be like a Sean Lewis and Jason Eck question for Wisconsin, right? And so I think you look at New Mexico and you go, gosh, they're gonna make hay here in this new era of the Mountain West, because I think they've, other than UNLV, they're just gonna, I think, clean up. And so good for Eck, but I don't see New Mexico as that partner. Texas State brought you into Texas. That's why you took them. They I think we're going to find out that they took a half distribution, half a bowl of soup, or escalating up when we start to see the numbers.
Yep.
How about you? Where do you stand on those two things?
Well, I look at it not as an issue of this school versus that school, this region versus that region. It's more just I think a fundamental piece of their strategy, which is lean and mean. The more meat and less fat, the better. And that makes a lot of sense, because in both the NCAA tournament and the college football playoff, schedule strength is going to be a huge deal for getting bids. And you want less fat and more meat. And so I think that they would rather stay lean and mean. I mean, that's a big part of the reason that the 5 Mountain West schools left, was to untether themselves from the bottom of that conference for competitive reasons, and to give themselves a better chance to get into the playoff because of the importance of strength of schedule and strength of record and quality wins, So to me, that's the issue. And they're going to look out, and they're going to, unless it's Memphis or Tulane, I just don't know that any school out there is going to clear the bar competitively for them. And I think that there's a similar problem on the basketball front too. There's not that many good options available.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think we see that the same.
Next one, I'm going to leave this one to you. This is your wheelhouse.
Okay. All right.
Why should Oregon State fans trust anything Scott Barnes touches?
Tough right now for Oregon State fans, because they have pivoted now, and they've gone, hey, wait a minute. The basketball program with Wayne Tinkle is flatlining.
Yep.
Football program has seen so much chaos and turnover. The Trent Bray hire was disastrous, and they're trying to wade out of that. And I think they do have some traction with Jamarcus Shepard. But now, fans, it's so mistrust for the administration.
Yep.
I think Barnes, he was heavily focused on the Pac-12 rebuild. I think the right move for him is going to be a pivot into an advisory role, because the job of a college athletic director has changed. And I think if he's reading the room, I think the right move is to, hey, mission accomplished. We got Oregon State in the new world Pac-12 going, July of 26, maybe pivot into an advisory role, because what I think you need at Oregon State in that AD job right now is you need somebody who's run a business. You need somebody who has experience, with a startup. If this conference is a startup, you need somebody who has fostered or been around an IPO offering. You need that kind of person, and not so much the old world college administrator who played basketball at a school and then became the AD. And so I think Barnes, if he's reading the room right, especially at his age, especially given that he had a heart thing, that wasn't that long ago. When I talked to him, I said, what did that give you? And he says he just has every day is a gift. And, I think there's a pivot move for him that is advantageous for his career and maybe a little bit for Oregon State's trajectory. In that, Jathy Murthy, the president there, she's incredibly loyal to Barnes. She's not going to push him out. But I think this is him raising his hand going, maybe I move into an advisory role.
Yeah.
And help a new AD and then go hire somebody. I almost think you need somebody like, remember when Oregon handed the keys briefly to Mike Bellotti and it wasn't kind of working. And then Pat Kilkenny came in.
Yep.
Pat Kilkenny had run businesses. Oregon built Matthew Knight Arena when Kilkenny was the AD. They paid him $1 a year salary. Yeah. And Kilkenny worked there. He hired Dana Altman. He got the basketball thing together. He sort of got the football thing pointed in the right direction. I think Oregon State needs one of those moves.
Yeah, it's a tough situation right now for Oregon State. And I wonder, would Barnes want to maybe transition, kind of like what Rick George is doing at Colorado, before he's got to make a decision on Wayne Tinkle?
I think you'd want to leave that decision for the new AD, wouldn't you? Like, it's why I'm looking here into the spring.
Yeah.
And I have written this a number of times. I go, this is where Scott Barnes goes, hey, I'm going to step back. Mission accomplished. New World Pac-12 is off and running. I'm going to continue to work in close proximity to the president and the AD that we hire. And I think it's not just a face-saving move. It's a pivot point, and I was looking at Teresa Gold, who hired Rick Hart as her new deputy commissioner. I kind of thought Barnes, would he get in play for that job? Like, could he be a deputy commissioner? Isn't that what he's been doing essentially at Oregon State?
No, that's a good point. His legacy, I think, is going to be, and you know better than I, you're on the ground there. I think his legacy is going to be, he's the guy who got Oregon State through the nightmare, right? And as much as anyone, kind of shaped the new Pac-12. Yeah. No doubt about that. That's going to be a bigger deal than the Trent Bray situation or the Tinkle situation.
100%.
For sure. All right, we got a couple more here. Who needs to step up and take the lead on restructuring the college football season so we can end with the championship game on New Year's Day? Preferably in the Rose Bowl.
You go first.
Well, ideally it would be a commissioner, but there's no commissioner because the only way to get a commissioner is for the SEC and Big Ten to agree to give up their authority and influence, which they're not going to do. The moment you hire a commissioner, Tony Petitti and Greg Sankey have less influence, and they don't want that, right? If anything, we're going the other direction, where they are co-commissioners running the sport. So, boy, the whole thing with the calendar is a mess, and it's not just about the playoff. It's also the transfer portal, and it's also signing day, and it's spring practice, summer workouts, the start of the season, whether it's week 1 or week 0. I've said it is like playing 7-dimensional chess inside a wormhole. Really difficult to do. I don't think they could ever get to the point where the championship game is on New Year's Day. I just think that's too big of a shift. Next year, the title game is going to be January 25th. This year, it's the 19th. Next year, it's going to be the 25th of January. They got to do something, though. They got to get it back up to somewhere in the January 8, 9, 10 window. So you're out of the way of the NFL playoffs. The part of the problem is the relationship with the major bowls: Rose, Sugar, Orange, Fiesta, Peach, Cotton. How do you make them all relevant on New Year's Eve, New Year's Day, if the quarterfinals are moved up in front of Christmas? It's really difficult. And I think that they have to untether themselves from some of those bowls in order to move it up. To me, they can't do it otherwise. If you're trying to get games for 6 bowls, you got 4 quarterfinals and 2 semifinals. And if you're doing that on New Year's Day and then the week after, your championship game is going to be in the middle of January. That's kind of part of the problem. It's a long-winded explanation, but they can't just move the title game up a few weeks. There's a lot of pieces to that.
Yeah, look, the question was who needs to step up. I think there's only one answer. I think it's ESPN. I think it goes back to your earlier comment about the ratings for the quarterfinals and the semifinals and now the championship game. I do think it would get the attention of ESPN if they believe that the timing of this, the NFL playoffs, all the focus kind of pivots to the NFL right now.
Yep.
Is that a major contributing factor to the ratings, or is it just that they don't have the brand names in the games? Maybe it's both. And so what I would think is that ESPN would pay attention to that and go, look, the NFL is our primary product.
Yeah.
We need to kind of change the calendar here to make it work for us. And I think everyone should play week 0. I think the conference championship game should happen the Saturday after Thanksgiving. And then you start the playoff. I think they could find a way to make that work. I think they could find a way to kind of untether themselves from most of the bowl games, let the bowl season be its own kind of thing, but the playoffs another thing. It's like the NIT and the NCAA tournament. But I think the answer is ESPN. I think TV's leading all of those conversations right now. And if there's going to be a change to the calendar, it's going to be prompted not by the academics. It's not for the right reason. It'll be prompted by ESPN to be the primary TV partner.
Well, and you mentioned just there, one of the other issues is the higher education element, right? Oh yeah, these are students. Yeah. So they've got to enroll.
They're enrolling now.
They've got to enroll in January. That's right. You can't allow them to transfer in March. That's a big problem, is having your free agency period during your playoff. But with the spring semester starting in January, there's no option. Also, the other thing is ESPN alone as the partner in the playoff a good thing? Or would they be better off having Fox and CBS also involve more of an NFL model? All right, here we go. Maybe last one or two.
Okay.
Two-part question. Any info on the discovery process in the Mountain West Pac-12 lawsuits, and any details on the Pac-12's war chest and how that money is being set aside?
Well, Oregon State and Washington State will tell you that they're living off the war chest. But Teresa Gold originally told me that about $65 million of that money was set aside for bringing in these new teams. So this lawsuit plays a factor in how much of that money gets cannibalized by the Mountain West schools, how much needs to be paid. Also, this discovery thing is ongoing. When you really look at the timeline of this thing, Wilner, I mean, this thing is going to stretch into 27, and it's, I still think it's ripe for a settlement, but that discovery process is ongoing and thorough. And the lawyers that I talk with and people on Twitter who think they're lawyers or may have stayed at a Holiday Inn Express all believe settlement is coming, but I don't expect anything imminent. I think it'll take time.
Yeah, at least into the spring or summer. There's no doubt about that. I think that part of the deceiving piece here is that they tried for mediation last spring before they knew the cards in each other's hands, right? And so there was no real motivation to agree to a settlement on either side until they start to see the cards play out. And that's what the discovery process, I think will do. In terms of the money, the poaching penalty lawsuit, that is $55 million. You mentioned the $65 million figure for acquiring schools. They're going at it over the $55 million in poaching, and then the separate lawsuit on what I would call the exit fee lawsuit filed by Colorado State, Boise State, and Utah State. That's about another $100 million in exit fees. So grand total is close to $150 million here at stake. My sense has always been the Pac-12's probably got a better case in the poaching penalty lawsuit, and I would say the Mountain West is a better case in the exit fee lawsuit. And if you just kind of figure it ends up somewhere in the middle, right? The two pots, the middle of those two pots is somewhere around $75 million owed to the Mountain West. And the Pac-12, keeping the large majority of that poaching fee.
Yeah, I think that's probably where it ends up. I know they ended up at 18 million was the number that they were trying to settle on for the per school. I expect that to come down a little bit. And I don't think, I think that antitrust, the poaching penalty part of that, the Pac-12's got a really strong case there. And I wonder if they'll be willing at all to give in on that and meet in the middle, because I think they probably think if it goes to trial, they're going to win that, plus probably get fees paid, their attorney fees. They may seek damages in the end. They, as part of that suit, they're entitled to that. But then this is not good for the Mountain West either. The Mountain West is trying to negotiate a TV deal that has been ongoing. They, the promises to UNLV and others of money that they're going to pay them. This is all. There's a lot of pressure and a lot of leverage right now, and I do expect settlement like everybody else. What do you got? Final question.
I think the Mountain West TV deal, the fact that that's not been announced is certainly very curious. I think it'll happen, next month or two is my guess from what I've heard, but you never know. We've seen sometimes where just the last detail in one of those TV deals can delay the whole process by many, many weeks. All right, one more, and we'll kind of loop back to the championship game. You ready?
Okay.
Is it time for Bill Snyder to move over compared to what Kirk Signetti has done at Indiana, what Snyder did at Kansas State, which is considered one of the greatest coaching jobs in the sports history, pales by comparison? So essentially, where do we want to put what Signetti has done, in context of college football history? What do you think?
I wrote about this today. I covered IU in 1998. I had one season. They finished 4-7, and everyone was like, "Hey, that's a good season. Like, there's some trajectory there," because they beat Iowa that year. And what Signetti has done is nothing short of miraculous. That was a losing program with losing culture. I do think he is assisted by this era with the portal and everything that you can do with NIL, and how, you can bring a bunch of players with you. And, that wasn't available in the Bill Snyder era. But I think it's a testament to the athletic director at Indiana that he hired a coach from JMU who brought more than a dozen players, who brought 6 coaches, changed the culture, parlay that with Mark Cuban coming in, like you've sold, like it's Shark Tank, and you've sold some proof of performance to Cuban. Now he's on board. What Signetti's done might be the greatest coaching job in college history, but it's also unique to this era. And fun. I think it's fun because we all thought that this portal and NIL era was going to benefit the haves. Indiana was not a have. And so that to me is a little sliver of redemption in this era.
I think you could make the case that it's the greatest short-term coaching job, and by that I mean a couple of years, in the history of American sports. If they win the national championship, Indiana losing this program in the history of the sport in 2 years, winning and beating Alabama, beating Ohio State, beating Oregon, beating Miami to get there, incredible, right? It's not like a Red Auerbach or Lombardi or Wooden or anything like that, right? Or even in some ways, not even like Nick Saban, because that was a 15-year run. It's short term, but it is beyond description. And the way they do it, no mistakes, incredibly efficient, carve you up, spit you out. It is incredible. And a lot of the guys that are his best players were from James Madison. Sun Belt guys are beating Ohio State.
It showed you, though, that the talent gap with a program like JMU, best players at JMU and best players in the Big Ten, wasn't as big as everybody thought. That the best players on that roster, the best 10 guys on that roster, could hold their own. More of a depth issue.
Depth.
And so I think you look around college football, it gives hope to other places. I also think it's sort of underscores, something I've seen up close. Chip Kelly comes from New Hampshire to Oregon. What worked at New Hampshire worked in big time football. And then what happens with, Scott Rueck is coaching at George Fox. Oregon State hires him. He takes the women's basketball program to a Final Four. Pat Casey, he's at George Fox. He wins 3 national championships at Oregon State in baseball. What works on the smaller scale works on the bigger scale. It does translate.
It does. And we'll see if he can finish it off. I mean, regardless, incredible. But if he finishes off Monday night, just something we will have never seen before, really. So, boy, we got covered a lot of ground here.
Yes.
Let's just say, and we got more questions we didn't get to. We can answer a few of those in the next coming weeks on the regular episodes. And we will certainly be back next week with another episode. Certainly leave us comments, like us, read us, watch us, do everything, right? You got any parting words here?
No, just have fun with this championship game too. Tune in and enjoy it, and ask yourself what's possible in college athletics. If Indiana and Miami are playing for a national championship, what is possible? And, apologies to the Georgia fans and the Ohio State fans and the Alabama fans, but you've had your fun.
Yes. Thanks very much, everybody.
Thank you.